in Cairo right now. It will be interesting as darkness falls upon the city, how many people will remain in that square. There are some that say that they're not going to leave until they get the victory, until Mubarak leaves. But others, as our correspondent had said earlier, because of the safety issue, safety being for themselves and also safety of their homes, because the people have had to protect their own homes because the police have not been on the scene. They left the scene. So it will be interesting to see how many people remain. Of course, as have been in the previous days, a curfew is in effect in Cairo, but obviously it is not having the effect that it was meant to have, as people definitely are showing that no longer are they fearful of the Mubarak regime. Again, live images on the left hand of your screen coming out of Tahrir Square in Cairo, where as many as 2 million people have shown up just in the square area. Now, we have reports of massive demonstrations in other cities, including Alexandria, where more than 1 million have turned out, in various other cities that the people have turned out in mass. So this is a very powerful statement. Their day of rage against the Mubarak regime has definitely been shown up, and many people have participated in. There have been several developments today. One is, you just seen at the bottom of your screen, a U.S. ambassador have talked to Mohammed al-Baradi, who many in the different circles are saying he could possibly be a person to help at least with the transition government. The U.S. ambassador has called him today. We've had many statements from various American officials and other officials, but in general, as many of our experts have been saying throughout this rolling coverage from here at Press TV, have said that basically the Western capitals and the governments have not come out very strongly. They're still walking a very fine line. They have supported Mr. Mubarak for all these years, and they're still supporting him. And yet at the same time, because they know that he is most likely on his way out, they want to support the protesters at the same time. But not a whole lot being said in the mainstream media to the extent of the abuse of the 30 years, almost 30 years of power that Hosni Mubarak has had. He's had an iron grip on this country, a country that his security forces instilled great fear by arresting, by there are many charges of torturing. So this is a different Egypt that you're looking at, a different Cairo that you're looking at. When you're looking at the people and they have this feeling of elation, or they have their fists in the air, this is a very different Egypt that they're seeing themselves. More than 5 people at any time gathering was actually illegal in this country. So this is absolutely amazing, an exceptional sight, not only for us looking at it, but for the people there themselves to see how many others are out there. And I'm sure that sense of solidarity that they feel, that they are not alone. It's not one individual or one family against the Mubarak regime, but it is the whole country against Mubarak. And this sense of hopelessness that perhaps they had before is definitely waning. Also in the streets, there were tanks on the streets. There were reports of up to 100 or hundreds of tanks blocking the palace, because originally the route of the demonstrators who had gathered at Tahrir Square was actually supposed to go towards the palace. But with the reports of hundreds of tanks in place, then they decided that they were not going to go that route. The demonstrators said, we do not want trouble, so they have decided to stay in the square and not march on the palace. There are reports of helicopters hovering on the over the palace, and we still are not sure exactly about the helicopters. What were they trying to do? Were they evacuating the palace or bringing someone in? We do not know. What you're looking at are images out of Cairo today, as millions have gathered at Tahrir Square. those are images of individuals obviously quite happy with the latest events to have taken place. And you know, it's not just demonstrators in Egypt, but around the world who have participated and trying to show their solidarity with the Egyptians. For example, Egyptians in Italy have also taken to the streets to show their solidarity with the anti-government protesters in Egypt. Press TV's correspondent in Milan, Jeremy Inson, has the story.
Time to go, Mr. Mubarak. That is the cry from the thousands of expat Egyptians living in northern Italy who gathered at the Egyptian consulate to show their anger at Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak. Over 5,000 protesters gathered outside the consulate to call for Mubarak to end his 30-year grip on power. The protesters rallied, chanted, hoisted banners and demanded change.
No al coprifuoco.
Our demands are no to the curfew and yes to liberty, democracy and social justice. These aren't difficult requests, they're simple. We just want the basic rights that the rest of the world has. Changing the government is not enough. Getting rid of the vice president is not enough. We must change the entire regime because 30 years have been too long.
Bastano 30 anni.
Elsewhere in Europe, protesters in Geneva also shouted slogans in Arabic, French and English. Anti-Mubarak demonstrations were also held across the United States and Canada. Around 50,000 Egyptians live and work in Italy, and many say they had no choice but to leave Egypt and seek a better life abroad.
People here in Europe and also in all world, because they didn't have any chance to work in Egypt. If he can help us, why didn't he do it before? 30 years enough for him.
There are likely to be more and more protests like this by expat Egyptians across the world as the popular uprising in Egypt gains momentum. What impact these protests have on events back in Egypt remains to be seen, but by showing their anger at Mr. Mubarak, expat Egyptians hope it gives strength to opposition voices and brings international pressure on the Egyptian president to resign. Jeremy Inson, Press TV, Milan.
لا الشمس كده ما تحركهاش.
جيلك في الشمس؟
لا عايز ظل عايز ظل عايز ظل.
تعال انت هنا طيب.
Well, welcome back to Press TV's rolling coverage of the events taking place in Egypt. Of course, this being the 8th day of massive anti-Mubarak demonstrations. We're going to switch over to Beirut, where we have Press TV's correspondent